All right, look, guys, I need you to listen. Come here. This video is about oil pumps. We are talking about the mechanical oil pumps inside the B58 engine. We're not talking about what oil is best. We're not talking about how often we change our oil. We're focusing on the topic at hand, and we will not get distracted and go into the comments asking all kinds of other questions. That's not true. All right, guys, we are back in my garage for another video. And today, yes, we are going to be talking about the oil pump failures. I know this is something that a lot of you guys have asked me to touch on in the past, and I've tried to wait because I felt like over time we would get more information, and it just didn't really feel like the whole story was out there, and I didn't feel like I had a good understanding of what was going on. But now we've seen more videos and images from other mechanics and people that have been changing the oil pumps, and I've done a lot more research, and I feel like I'm finally at a point where I can really explain this to you guys so you can actually understand what's going on. It's definitely not what most people are saying it is, but I think it just gives a clearer picture of what the problem is and how you guys can, keep an eye on your car to make sure the worst doesn't happen to you. So let's go ahead and talk about it, and hopefully you guys find this video useful. Now, as always, for everybody that's new to the channel, I create these videos to help keep you updated on the latest developments in our community, as well as discuss technical topics so that we have a better understanding of how our engines work. So if you're interested in more videos like that, be sure to subscribe because there will be a lot more coming out in the future. So again, we're talking about oil pumps, and this isn't anything new or unique to BMWs in the sense that every engine has an oil pump. The whole purpose of it is to suck the oil that's at the bottom of your engine's oil pan and pressurize it to push it up through all of your engine internals. So your oil pump is what sends oil to your cams, to your crankshaft, to your pistons. Everything inside of your engine that gets lubricated with oil gets the oil from your oil pump. So obviously that's an extremely critical component in your engine. Now, like I said, this isn't new at all. Every engine has it, but like usual, BMW decided to reinvent the wheel. So I would like to introduce to you the volumetric flow controlled oil pump. And what's in the B58 isn't brand new to the B58, but like I said, it is pretty unique to BMW. It was introduced, as far as I can tell, back in the N54 days, so like the late 2000s. And the whole purpose here is to basically control how much oil is flowing to your engine based on demand. It seems like this started primarily to help control the Vanos system. So with our variable cam timing, all of that is controlled by oil pressure, and that puts a huge demand on your oil system. So by introducing this updated oil pump, you're able to send oil to the Vanos system when it's needed, but also minimize how much oil is going through your engine when it's not needed. And that just makes sure that you have all the oil pressure when it's most critical, but you're also minimizing wear on your oil and how much extra efficiency losses you're getting from extra oil going through your engine when the demand is low. So here's a video showing what your oil pump looks like, and you can see in the internals, it is pretty complicated. There is the middle part, which is the actual pump, and you can see the blades on it that actually push the oil into your engine. And then you can see on the outside, there is this circle, this big, basically ring that bounces up and down and is balancing on this spring. Now that ring is called an adjusting ring, and the whole purpose of that is to basically change how much oil is flowing through the oil pump. So when it's kind of centered and there's just an even circle around the oil pump, it's flowing a minimum amount of oil. But when it's shifted to one side and it has really huge cavities on one side of it, that increases the suction of the oil pump, because as it spins around, the gaps in the veins get bigger and bigger, and that creates the vacuum effect that sucks up the oil. And as it flows into the engine, it pushes the oil through the engine a lot more. So you're increasing flow and increasing pressure in a high demand scenario. So the oil pump has two different kinds of operation. There's an electronic operation as well as a manual operation. And the manual one is kind of the most simple. The way that it works is as oil is flowing up into the engine, some of the excess oil is going to flow back to your oil pump. And that excess oil is going to basically create pressure on top of the adjusting ring and push it down. So it's going to push against that spring, move it closer to the centered position so the oil pump is right in the middle, and that's going to minimize how much oil is flowing through the engine. So if you have a lot of excess oil, it's going to push it down farther and reduce how much oil is flowing through the engine. Now, in the opposite sense, if you're pushing oil through the engine and there's not a lot of excess, there's not going to be a bunch of oil pressure pushing that adjusting ring down. So the spring is going to push it up, which increases oil flow and increases oil pressure. So it naturally kind of controls itself based on how much oil is returning to your oil pump. Now, on top of that, BMW has implemented DME control. So there is an electronic control valve that's controlling how much oil is going back to your oil pump. And this is all based on DME tuning. So depending on your load, your Vanos timing and all the different things that go into calculating how much oil pressure you need, the DME is going to send a signal to the control valve that controls how much oil is going back to the adjusting ring. So this electronically preemptively determines how much oil pressure you need without having to wait for the oil pressure to balance out. So if that ever fails, it will revert back to the manual operation. They call it emergency operation, but you kind of have two different methods there that you can rely on to make sure it works. Another key thing to consider here is that spring pushes it up to the default position, which is maximum oil pressure. So if there were a scenario where it wasn't working and you're losing oil pressure, it defaults to flowing as much oil as possible. Now, the problem we have here that I think isn't being illustrated very well is what's actually failing, because the oil pump itself, the housing is still metal. The blades are still metal. You can see the internals of the oil pump are metal. What's plastic and what's failing is the adjusting ring, basically that outside circle that's going around the oil pump. So when that cracks or breaks, obviously it can't control your oil pressure properly, which can cause a lot of issues. And you can see some images here that people have posted with all the plastic pieces on the table, and they're saying, oh, the impeller's breaking, the blades are made of plastic. That's not accurate. It's the adjusting ring that's plastic. Now, from an engineering standpoint, I'm kind of surprised to see that it's failing. When I actually understood that and I looked at it, it seems pretty beefy. It seems like it doesn't do a whole lot. So what's really going on? But it seems like right at that thin section up at the top is where it typically cracks and breaks. So maybe there's just not enough reinforcement there, or maybe it's the actual plastic material. A lot of people are saying they're experiencing these failures when it gets really cold and the plastic gets brittle, and then it cracks as, oil pressure changes. So something in there is definitely messed up. It's, fixed now. They're now making them with metal internals. So it seems like that issue is not going to be a problem in the future. But there was a period for a while where they were making it from plastic and some of them were cracking. Now, a couple things to note here. So first of all are the symptoms, which you can expect to experience if your oil pump is going out. One is, your oil level won't read, which is kind of weird. It doesn't make sense to me. But now that I've done a lot more research, it kind of is starting to make sense. If you guys want me to make a video on that explaining like how the oil level reads and stuff, I can talk about that in a future video. But it seems like when it's cracked, the oil level won't be able to read to 100%, like it'll stop in the middle and never fully read your oil level. The other thing, of course, is much more catastrophic if you have like an engine failure. So if it breaks completely and it's not accurately sending oil pressure to your engine where it needs it, then your engine obviously can fail. So either you spin a bearing or damage something internally where your engine won't run anymore. And that's what some of these guys have experienced, where people bring in a car because it's knocking or something, and they find that the oil pump failed and it gets replaced under warranty. So what I recommend if you want to stay on top of this is just checking your oil level every couple weeks or couple months, just to make sure that it can read accurately. It seems like that's kind of an early warning sign where maybe the oil pump itself has cracked but not completely broken apart, and then you can go to the dealership and get your oil pump replaced. Now, unfortunately, there does not seem to be like an extended warranty on this. There doesn't seem to be like a TSB or anything documented by BMW identifying this as an issue. A lot of people are posting that dealerships and technicians know it's a problem, and when you explain the issue, they know the oil pump needs to be replaced, but nothing has been carried off from there. So I would just keep an eye on it. It's also mostly affecting B58 TU cars that were made in 2019. So the early TU engines, 2020 model year, like early production cars. That's around the time where the internals of the oil pumps that were plastic seem to be having issues out in the field. So if you're able to do a VIN look up your build date on your early M340i Supras, whatever you have. And if it was built in 2019 or like maybe even early 2020, then that's something you want to keep an eye on. There's also no way to actually check it yourself. Even the oil pump pictures that you're seeing online, those are dissected. Those are with the cover taken off. So if you drop your oil pan and look at it, you won't see the internals like that. You have to actually take the cover off and look at the internals to see if it's plastic or not. I've seen a bunch of different part numbers being thrown around, so I don't necessarily want to put that on here either. It seems like the new part numbers are shown online if you look up your VIN, but I don't think that the old part numbers are accurately represented, or maybe they started making the new parts under the same old part number, but I haven't seen like a revised part number, if you will, to indicate that something was changed and this is the before and this is the after. So lots of different information out there. I would just, like I said, check your oil level from time to time, make sure that it can read accurately and keep an eye on it. Also, of course, if you're getting things like an oil pressure light or an oil pressure warning, shut the car off immediately, have it towed to the dealer and have them address it. That's not something that you want to play with, because the more that you drive it, the more the issue can create more catastrophic damage, where instead of just replacing an oil pump, you might have to replace an entire engine. So hopefully BMW acknowledges this soon, especially for those of you guys that have cars built during those dates. It seems like a lot of you have also reached out to me and said you're at 60, 70,000, whatever miles, and you haven't had any problems. So I don't know how widespread it is, but this is definitely just something that can happen, and I wanted to put it on your radar. So for now, I think that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope this helps. And if you have any other questions or comments, leave them down below.